I used to try to find strong male figures to try to emulate. You know, on my little wall where I slept, I used to have a picture of Marvin Hagler, Matthew Saad Muhammad, and Dwight Braxton, a couple of great boxers of the era, and tough guys, and solid workman-like boxers, and then a picture also of Superman. Soccer was kind of a big deal in Southern California, and so I played soccer a bit, and I was okay. I was an okay athlete. I was pretty earnest and fairly competitive, and so I was okay. Nothing great. I tried basketball. I wanted to be good at basketball. I wasn't very good at that. It really wasn't until I got into high school that I started to wrestle and play football. And in both of those sports, I started out, it was awful. In wrestling, I lost all my matches my first year, and in football, I just was not very good. I desperately wanted to be good at something. I never felt very good at anything. And I remember, and I didn't feel like I got, you know, not to bemoan a crummy childhood or something like that, but I didn't really ever feel like I got a lot of positive feedback at home. And so I remember my very first match in high school. It was a JV match. I was 135 pounds, and the match was they last 4.5 minutes long, and I was probably on my back looking at the ceiling for about 4 minutes of that, and just struggling not to get pinned. And it was really humiliating. I mean, it's a pretty, be in that little polyester monkey suit with a bunch of people, yelling at you, and you're just getting throttled by a guy. I didn't get pinned, and I remember getting off the bus on the way home, and my coach, a fellow named Manuel Valdez, said to me, it's just in passing as I was walking by him, he said, you tried really hard out there, and if you keep that up, you'll be okay. And it was something that he probably said 100 other times. For whatever reason, I was so starved for that kind of positive feedback, especially in the face of failure like that I just glommed onto it. And even though I lost every match that year, for some reason I didn't quit. And I didn't know what to do to get better. I just knew that effort was required. And I used to just make up different workouts to do that were, just dumb stuff. I used to be these buckets of tar that we had, roofing tar at home, and I used to carry them to school every day. They weighed about 60 pounds each, and I'd be able to get about a little ways to school, and I had to set them down. And by the time I was a sophomore, I could make it all the way to school and back holding these things. And then when I got to that point, then every day I would take a little piece of athletic tape and I'd put it around the handle. So every day the handle would get a little bit thicker and a little bit thicker, just in little increments. And I just little dumb, unorthodox things like that made me very, very strong for a teenage kid. There was a fella when I was a junior who was one of the top wrestlers in the state, and I wrestled him in the finals of a tournament early. It was my first year on varsity, and everybody was saying, "Oh my gosh, you got to go against that guy. You got to go against that guy." And I told myself, well, I'll just go out there and give it the best I can. I'll just give him a heck of a match. And I went out there, and I was basically just a valiant loser. I tried hard, but I didn't have any intention of really winning. And the guy pinned me. And I ended up meeting that guy again to get to the state championships later in the year, or toward the end of the year, and I made it to the finals again. I was an unseeded guy and beaten the number 2 and 3 seeded guy, and went to this guy in the finals. And I told myself, last time I wrestled that guy, I didn't give myself a chance to win. I made myself, even if I had to lie to myself to make myself believe that I could beat people, I'd give myself a chance to beat them. And it turns out that I got in that guy's face and I ended up beating him. And nobody expected it, and the place just erupted, and it was just chaos everywhere. They just couldn't believe it. And I just made a beeline under the bleachers of this arena just to be by myself, and just told myself, just remember this always, that you can beat anybody, but you have to give yourself a chance to beat them. I went to UC Davis College up in Northern California. I played football and wrestled there, and again, I started out, I was fairly mediocre at the outset, or at least in the first year, and then over time, again, the tables sort of turned. I was ended up being an All-American twice in wrestling, and an All-American as a defensive lineman in football my senior year. When I think of the volume and the intensity of training that I did at that time, it's almost inconceivable to me now. But I was just constantly driven. It was an obsession for me, and it got me to a certain point, a certain level of success, and then I think at a certain point it started to it undermined my progress. We had a new athletic director who had been a wrestler in college, and a good wrestler in college, and he called me into his office, and he had a videotape of a guy that was the 3-time returning national champion heavyweight in my weight class, and he pulled me into his office, and he turned on the tape, and he said, "Let's see how we're going to beat this guy." And I remember when he said that my whole body just felt electric. Like, this guy thinks I can beat this, one of the greatest wrestlers. My career ended after the Olympic trials in '92, and I started coaching wrestling at UC Davis, and I was still pretty young. I was still in my late 20s, and I started to box. And so I was boxing and had a strong background in wrestling, and somebody had given me a tape of the UFC and said, "Hey, you ought to think about doing this." And I looked at it, and it just didn't seem like it seemed like a spectacle to me. Like there was no, I'd come from an amateur wrestling background where there's a very honorable tradition, and this just seemed like, like a street fight, or a fight in the parking lot of 7-Eleven. I was around fighting. I'd been exposed to it at a pretty young age. I mean, as I said, my dad was a pretty rough fellow, and was a bit of a bully. And bullying happened in school, and I seemed to be a target for that, because it didn't occur to me to run away or avoid stuff. I just would sit there, and people would want to push me around or sock me or something like that, and I would just stay there and just like, okay, well, I guess this is what we're doing. And over time, I've always abhorred bullies, and I think part of that looking for strong figures is to try to figure out how to become like a bully buster. I fought a bit, and I was interested in boxing and fighting and that sort of thing, but not in a predatory sort of a way. But I remember there was a fellow that I used to meet after school. He went to an elementary school across town from me, and for an entire school year, we would meet behind a gas station and fight each other. We didn't have a beef. But we would fight each other. And guys that worked at the gas station used to bet on it and stuff like that. I went to a school that had it looked like a prison. It had no windows in it. And it was just this big concrete structure. And I was, a guy had me up against the wall one time, and he had a knife to my throat, a little older kid. And I remember being so terrified. I pissed my pants. And it just occurred to me that being afraid wasn't the answer. I had to do something else. And I think the next time a guy bullied me, I just kind of snapped a bit and just came unglued and beat him up pretty well. And that sort of reinforced something like, don't be afraid of people. Don't be prey. And at the same time, go after predators. As I started to become more proficient at this little fighting racket, I guess maybe from reading all those comic books, it's like I made like a conscious choice. Like, I got to try to use these powers for good. It's fighting in these little warehouses and stuff like that for, hundreds of dollars, or beating 3 guys in a night for $1,000. And I was broke, and that seemed like a great deal to me. Man, I'm going to drive down, fight 3 guys, and I get $1,000. $1,000. I used to have to work a month to make $1,000. I'm still a purist, I like to compete. It wasn't about the money, but that was a nice little bonus. I remember the first time I was in the UFC, they interviewed me beforehand, and the fellow that was interviewing me was saying, "Oh, you're in the UFC. It's the Super Bowl of MMA. How does it feel?" And I said, I don't want to. I'm not belittling your organization but I'll tell you, you can put any kind of name you want on it, and I'm going to be in there, and there's going to be a guy there trying to separate me from my senses, and that's what I'm thinking about. I don't care about titles. I don't care about anything like that. I'm testing myself. I said, you could take me in the next 5 best guys in the world, lock us in a gym, and just let us sort it out, and I'd be okay with that. I wanted to compete. I wanted to test myself against people. All the attendant, fanfare and hoopla and stuff like that. I'm just one of these guys that, maybe I read Thoreau and just really took it to heart, but I'm about getting to what's essential, and stripping away all the bullshit and just getting to what's essential. And that's what attracts me to fighting. It strips away all the, a guy can come at me, he can have the best stare down in the world. Dude, you got to show up and fight me. That other stuff is nothing. And that's the stuff that attracts me. I love enthusiasm and stuff like that. Don't call a guy a pussy when he's out there fighting. Don't do that. If you do, you're going to have a problem with me. Because you have no idea. No idea. Let your fighting speak for itself. That's what I'm interested in when I watch. That's what I want to see. I want to see the technique, but I want to see the human drama unfold of 2 guys pitting their wills against each other. Not who's going to talk the most mess before a fight. Not who's going to, man. That kind of stuff, I have a visceral reaction to. In all of high school, I probably said less than 100 words that whole time. And, I don't know why they would do this, but, at the end of the year, they give, little senior things of most likely to succeed and stuff like that. They told me I had to be at an assembly to show up to one of those things, and I thought, oh, I'm going to get most athletic. I had a pretty good year. And I didn't want to get in front of everybody, but I thought, oh, okay, well, I'll go. And they called me up there, and I got some award, if you want to call it that, for being the most bashful in school. I don't know why you'd do that, pull somebody in front of everybody and tell them they're the most shy person in school. But the thing is I would be the last guy you'd expect to be acting, in a film or anything, or performing like that. I got a chance to do it, and I was afraid to do it. And I knew because I was afraid to do it, I wanted to try it. I don't like to. I've been afraid in my life, and I sure didn't like it. And I try to always find ways not to be afraid. And I think that's sort of defining characteristic for me. I know enough now to know if there's something that I'm really passionate about, I have a reasonable chance of achieving it. It's not going to be easy, and sometimes I got to just keep plugging away. But I'm willing to do that. My determination is pretty dogged. I'm not really afraid of hard work, that's sort of like a noble inheritance from my mom. She worked awfully hard to raise us. I think when I'm around people, I kind of shrink down, because I don't want people to be afraid of me. I don't want people to listen to me because I'm imposing or something like that. I want to have something worthwhile to say if I choose to say it. I had people when I was younger got hurt. They had no business getting hurt. People close to me. And that flipped a switch in me. I guess that was that was a sea change for me, where it changed my outlook. And that whole notion of being afraid of people, of being afraid of the threat of physical violence. I lost that. If I know I'm right, I will fight and fight and fight and fight. But the thing is I try to make sure I handle my business so I don't have any, when it comes down to fighting like that, I don't have the emergency brake on, because I don't have any moral quandaries, it's on. So, there's that. It's the, that fear, that primal sort of fear of being afraid of being hurt by a predator. That kind of thing, that flipped a switch for me. That started when that guy put the knife to my throat and made me piss my pants. And it was reinforced. And then I found out when I faced those kinds of things, the result usually worked out a lot better. I didn't piss my pants anymore. And then I've tried to apply that to other things. As I said, I was just had an inordinate amount of shyness, or degree of shyness, and that took a little while to overcome. And I'm not completely over it. I'm functional now. Fear oftentimes is born out of unfamiliarity, and so I just try to get more familiar with things and try to break out of just the prescribed notion of what a fighter should be, what an athlete should be, and so it's just an ongoing process. I'm always finding things that I feel that little twinge of, man, I don't know if I belong here, but I have enough now. If it's something that I think that I might have a passion for it, I have enough reserve of knowing that I can overcome most things. That's why I say, wrestling and fighting was a great teacher for me. Because you start to, most fears are just unfounded. You're afraid of a concept, nothing real. There's no threat there really, and when you can see through that stuff, that veil of perceived threat, things open up. In those hours before a fight, or immediately after a fight, a lot of times I find in those moments, as I say, when everything gets stripped away, and you're just left with the essential. I'd have these sort of crystalline images or thoughts, and so I would try to write those down in poem form. And I'm a lover of words, and for a guy that doesn't speak much, I mean, I appreciate people that can speak well and write well and things like that. And to the extent that I can, with writing, I'd like to be able to craft good stories. I feel like I've got a handful of stories that are worth telling. My big thing is I want to be able to do them justice. I sort of unconsciously belittle my accomplishments, whatever they are, because I don't want to get complacent or self-satisfied or seem arrogant. I think, honestly, the thing that's giving me the most gratification are people that I've had the opportunity to coach and do well. When I see something that I've taught, somebody use something that I've taught them, use it to good effect, whether it's a technique or it's a mindset or something like that, and they come back to me, or I see it, or they come back to me, and it's like, you taught me that. It feels really, really good. If only because I think it honors the people that taught me those things.